Welcome to the Secret Squirrels. Tonight we are going to do some deep diving into one of the main thinkers behind Muslim, we'll call it radical Islam, political Islam, those kind of things. And this is Secret Squirrels. We are in association with Jerome Corsi and CorsiNation.com website. And we're here to entertain and hopefully edify you. So let's start. What do you think, guys? What do we want to do tonight? We're going to do some looking into first screen I want to bring up is this FireEye cyber threat map thing. We had problems with the normal one that we were using, and so I don't know if they're down. Max, you got any information on that?
I don't have any information. Sorry.
So it's what is the name of that? I forget.
The other one?
Yeah, I can't remember. The Norse attack map. So as far as I can tell, it looks like they're down. So it's kind of ironic in a way that there's people that are monitoring our cyber threats are down. But we got a new one up there. It's called FireEye. It's not as pretty, but you can kind of see what's going on. And I can't tell because we haven't been looking at this one, so I don't know if it's any different from any other days. But yeah, and then we're going to move into the Spider, our aggregator. If you probably are familiar with the story about the missing journalist that people are saying is dead. It's the very top story. You got over 80 sources that are covering that right now. We got a Breitbart article here that is about Pompeo to Erdogan. It's U.S. ready to help with Khashoggi investigation. So Pompeo, I think he's Ohio, right? West Ohio. I don't know how it goes. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Foreign Minister Mevlut, I'm sorry about these names, Cavusoglu.
Sounds good to me.
To discuss the disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. So he goes missing in Turkey at the Saudi consulate. So, who is this Jamal Khashoggi? He was a reporter that had somehow managed to come across as friendly, as a Western liberal progressive sort of guy, but he is nothing of the sort. He was in league with the previous Saudi Arabian king, and so he is definitely one of the black hats. Let me see. I'm going to get the Wikipedia page up here real quick on Jamal Khashoggi. So, Saudi Arabian journalist, and he worked for Al Watan. So that is a Saudi Arabian paper. And that paper was, it says main publishing center at the Abha in the south of the country, close to the Yemen border. The paper was based in Asir province, the southwest of Saudi Arabia. So that's on the Yemen side of Saudi Arabia. They're friendly towards the old regime that has been replaced, partially in cooperation with the United States under Trump. And so this is the bad guys, and they're going to be basically Muslim Brotherhood sort of thing. And we learned yesterday that the Muslim Brotherhood originated in Egypt. However, looking through some of the sources that we found, there's a guy there that there's a common theme. Even though there's differences between Sunni and Shia, there's actually a common theme between them in terms of the radical elements of either of those schools of thought, those theological schools of thought. And so there's a bad guy that all these people are studying, and I think he died in the 60s, and we'll get to him in a minute. But so this Jamal Khashoggi guy is presumed dead, murdered, all that kind of stuff. And Pompeo because it happened in Turkey. Pompeo went to Turkey and offered Erdogan to help out. You know, why not? We'll do our good deed or be good neighbors and all that stuff, and we'll help out and try to find him. So, Bandit, what have we heard normally so far about this Jamal Khashoggi guy?
Well, I can't. I don't have the link real handy right now, but supposedly, I did read a link today that supposedly the Saudis were going to come out and say that a general of the Saudi army had him and was interrogating him, and it went wrong, and he got killed.
Uh-huh.
That's the last thing I read about it.
You know, I don't know if you guys know this, but he is the nephew of the late high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi, the guy that was part of the Iran-Contra scandal. Also, he was a cousin of Dodi Fayed, who was the guy that got killed with Princess Diana.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Yes.
If there's one thing since I've come to Corsi Nation and between Corsi Nation and the Squirrels, nothing surprises me anymore. The deep state.
There's no such thing as coincidences here, is there?
Right. And the deep state is tied to everything.
They are.
Everybody is tied to everybody else.
They're like a bunch of inbreds.
Blows my mind. It really, truly does.
So yeah, it says in Wikipedia here. His grandfather was of Turkish origin, so he's got Turkish ethnicity,
right? And
so his grandfather was a physician that worked for King Abdulaziz Al Saud. So he's one of those a bad king, and the founder of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So the Khashoggi guy's been in tight with these Saudi families for a while, the Saudi royals. But he's got a nephew.
And not the good ones.
Yeah, the nephew.
Not the good ones.
Not the current one.
Right. He's the nephew of late high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi. So that's the Iran. Yeah, so that's the Iran-Contra connection.
Yeah.
Let me look on him real quick. So that's during Reagan's tenure. I don't think that Reagan was a good guy. I mean, he may have had some things that he was doing for us. I mean, he might have been fighting the powers of the deep state in some regards, but in other regards, he's definitely serving their interests, because that whole Iran-Contra thing was under Reagan's watch. I think he was in on it. So,
you're going to hurt my feelings, and if it comes out to be that that's the truth, then that's the truth. I loved that man. He was one of my favorites.
Which one?
Reagan,
yeah.
Now, here's the thing that here's my theory I'm gonna throw at you, and I'll only throw it once, because if it all comes out in the deep state, if it all comes out and ties go back to Reagan, I'll believe it, and I'll be like, oh well, whatever. But I truly believe that, and he seemed to me like maybe he was such a good guy and a little bit naive. I mean, he could put on a show. He could be the patriot. He could, and he wasn't stupid. But I do believe he was naive. And I do believe there was things that were going on in his administration that he did not know about. That's
probably true if he's good or bad. I mean, either way, there's going to be things going on that he doesn't know about, because he's just the president. Right, he's not actually in charge.
That's what I was going to say to you about the Iran-Contra deal and stuff. I think this guy, even if he ended up on that thing, I think good intentions. I think he was a patriot, but that's neither here nor there. That's gone. That's ancient history, as they say. So, but I hope they don't find anything bad about him.
If my memory serves me right, the Khashoggis, I'm not really sure which one of them had a lot, and I do mean a lot of business dealings here in Utah. You know, I do believe at one time they bought Saltaire, and I do believe they built the KSL building where the news channel is. But I mean, he had a lot of dealings here in the United States, and I know for sure one of them did here in Utah. And so it makes you wonder how deep the corruption with them goes. Just saying.
Yeah, and we're not here to investigate Reagan tonight. We're looking into radical forms of Islam, and we can look into our previous presidents at another time, and we'll have to do that probably. But as for tonight, we're just looking into the radical Islam and its theoretical underpinnings. That's the objective. And to kind of study together. This is, I'm kind of looking at this as like an opportunity to have something of a book club, something like a book club anyway, where we all sit around and read together. But it's not as exciting in you know, as doing headline news, but I think it's more satisfying in the end. It's you get deeper understanding by just choosing one story to look at in a deep way.
Well, it also helps you. It helps you understand when people are feeding you a line and when they're not.
Yeah.
You know, you've got at least some information to fall back on.
More, yeah, it provides more context to that's what's going on in the news. So anyway, yeah, this Jamal Khashoggi's guy is dead. Basically, a bad guy, has extremely close ties to the Saudi royals, but he himself seems to have Turkish ethnicity, Turkish family lines, his own family lines. And he worked for Al Watan, the Saudi Arabian newspaper. Most recently, he's been offering up some op-ed pieces in the Washington Post. So, you know, Washington Post.
That's interesting.
So, but he somehow managed to sell himself as a good Western liberal, progressive sort, you know, all peacenik and stuff like that. But he is not. He is not. He's he's not. He's the bad sort of Saudi royal. He's with those guys. So
I don't know that he sold himself that, or if MSM just
they interpret him that way.
Right. They just want to run with it. It's one of those things. If you're an enemy of Trump's, hey, you're a best friend of mine. You know, that's how they look at things. So if they can take down Trump anyway, anyhow, then this guy's a white knight. He's a good guy. And that might be what we're looking at here.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And then on Wikipedia, there's a warno at the top where it says it's been heavily edited because of his recent death. That right there is the thing about Wikipedia. Anybody can go in there and edit anything and put anything they want to about anybody.
Oh, that's right.
On any of it. And it's horrible. You know, for a long time, I thought Wikipedia was actually pretty accurate. But who was it? I think it was General Flynn recently. Some nut job literally went in and edited out a bunch of stuff on General Flynn and put a bunch of, I'd call it scandalous stuff in there that absolutely had nothing to do with General Flynn.
Right.
And he was like a psychopath. It was more like what this, whoever edited it, because I went in and looked at their profiles, and it.
Yeah, and I said this last night, and I should reiterate tonight that Wikipedia is not a definitive source. You don't want to form any conclusions from Wikipedia, but it does, in my experience, it does serve well to give us a place to start our investigations. And that's why last night we came across couple of different texts. This one here I have up on the screen. So, you know, this is written by an academic in the continental tradition. So that's in the Continentals. That's what you're hearing about postmodernism and a lot of that sort of thing. But you got the Frankfurt School, some of these academics, because the philosophy behind, I mean, like if you're an English major and you go into a typical college and you start studying what you mean, you're signing up that maybe you want to study the best literature in Western culture, but you know that's not where you're going to end up with, because you're going to end up studying a lot of Marxist theory, feminist theory, stuff like that, because the bad guys have infiltrated our academic environment. But so this guy in particular, this Andrea Mura, or I don't know if it's a guy even, it could be a girl, I don't know. But he's talking about this radical Islamic thinker, and this is Sayyid Qutb. So it says here that this one particular text, Milestones, one of the most influential books in the history is Islamism. And this Sayyid Qutb, he's he's one of the most influential thinkers, and he's common for both the Sunni and the Shiite. What do you call it? The radicals, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Even though it started in Egypt, it actually possibly got taken over by this Qutb guy. So he's got an eschatological vision. That's a fancy way of saying end times. That's apocalyptic literature. But this continental philosophy stuff, these guys are the ones that are pushing. I mean, it's a lot of them are Marxists. A lot of them are neo-Freudians. So they take Freud's basic ideas and they kind of twist it a little bit, tweak here and there. There's one guy in particular, Lacan, who is psychoanalysis, but he does it in a very strange way. He builds on some of Freud's theories, because even though Freud was discounted in England and America, a lot of continental philosophers still study his work. And you combine Freud with Marx, and now you've got a recipe for the Frankfurt School. And they're the ones that infected the Democratic Party during the 50s and 60s. The New Left in America came out of this school of thought. So that's why reading these people's positions is how you know your enemy. This is, who are these people? Well, this is it. This is who they are. And they mention a couple people here. Zizek, I'm not sure where he's from, but he's very, very popular in the English department. And so this Badiou guy is a French guy, and I think he does philosophy and mathematics. But Zizek is he does film critique and things like that. But they're all a bunch of Marxists when it comes down to it. I mean, that's pretty much what they do. Let me see. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. Where did I see it? Okay, so this article aims to make the case for assuming philosophical standpoint in the analysis of Sayyid Qutb's Milestones. And here's that book that is supposedly the common theme behind all of the revolutionaries in Islam, the political Islam. So relocating its significance beyond the above-mentioned fields, the objective is to pursue a creative and topological reading to this crucial text. And so, again, they mentioned that phrase, eschatological vision, which is end times, apocalyptic literature, but describing his theories and stuff, and we're going to get into that tonight. We're going to look more deeply at what he understands, what he's preaching. Let me see. I got... I think this is the book. No, that's not it. This one. There. Okay, so Milestones is the name of this book. Also, road signs or something like that. It can be interpreted. But there is in this book. There's one of the part of the introduction to this book is a biographical sketch of this Qutb guy. And before we do that, though, we're going to take another peek at web source. This is what do you call it? Smithsonian, right? The Smithsonian magazine.
Right.
So that's Smithsonian.com. Lesson in Hate: How an Egyptian Student Came to Study 1950s America and Left Determined to Wage Holy War. He ended up dying in 1966. I think he was killed, but here's a little...
he was executed, yes.
Yeah. And so they mark him down as a martyr, so he's got martyr status in there.
Oh.
But, So Qutb saw things that others did not. He sees that the British, he doesn't like their music. He doesn't like how we do things. So such grumbling by an unhappy crank would be almost comical, but for one fact: a direct line of influence runs from Sayyid Qutb to Osama bin Laden and to bin Laden's Egyptian partner in terror, Ayman al-Zawahiri. From them, the line continues to another quietly seething Egyptian sojourning in the United States, the 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta. Qutb's gripes about America require serious attention because they cast light on a question that has been nagging since the fall of the World Trade Center. Why do they hate us? Because Qutb told them to, basically. But, I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood, this is what we learned last night, the Muslim Brotherhood has been around for a while, because their objective is simply to, they're supposedly a reaction to British imperialism. And that Kenya stuff, like Obama being from Kenya, why is Kenya important? Well, that's got to do with the British Empire, and when they sliced and diced Africa up into pieces, and that's a major source of power, British power. And there's, and I think a lot of the family lines within Kenya, Africa has its own obsession with family lines, but I guess it fits in nicely with the elitists in the British world. But at the same time, the Germans were down there too. The Germans, I think, they had a German colony down right same time as the British colony in Kenya, and they having some, they were competing for influence in Kenya because they had their own, I'm not sure what natural resources are down there. And a lot of this, I think, ties back to oil, making a deal with, and there's Wahhabi. We have to look into the Wahhabi line in this too. The Wahhabi was a theologian, so that's his influence in there too. But so this Qutb guy. So let's look down a little more. And where's his biography start? Okay.
Born in 1906.
Okay, I'm trying to put that on the display here. Okay. So 30 years after his death, he's still the most influential ideologue of Islamic revival in the contemporary Muslim world. Began life in obscurity in the village of Musha near Upper Egypt. Born in 1906. So he's born into an academic family. He swiftly developed a love of learning, became a memorizer of the Quran. He was entered the service of Egyptian Ministry of Education, so early on he's probably involved in some kind of propaganda campaigns. Okay. Is there anything else interesting? Impressions of America. So this is basically just a more detailed version of what you saw in the Smithsonian article. Okay, so for his part, Qutb had been increasingly well-disposed to the Muslim Brotherhood ever since he witnessed the ecstatic reception given in America to news of the assassination of Imam Hassan al-Banna, founder of the organization. His perception of the Ikhwan as defenders of Islam was further strengthened after his return to Egypt, when a British official, James Hayworth Dunn, told him that Ikhwan represented the only barrier to the establishment of Western civilization in the Middle East. So the Muslim Brotherhood from the beginning is just trying to get rid of Western influence. And since then, they've kind of taken Qutb's point of view, and now they become internationalists because they do not recognize geographical boundaries. They view Muslim people as a single universal community, and they are just trying to spread it around the world. And I think yesterday we also came across this idea that up until like the 1920s or so, it was almost heretical for Islamic people to become involved in politics. They were very against that sort of thing. I mean, Islam as a doctrine doesn't. I mean, they see an importance in getting politically involved, but definitely they don't see it the way that this guy does, because this guy, he sees it as you can't fulfill Islam, the premise of Islam, without becoming political, and to the extent even that goes so far as to say that you can't be Muslim without being a jihadist, basically.
Hey, Brainstorm, Colleen and Alan in our chat once, she says, just before YouTube went down, she says we were talking of Wahhabism.
Right. Yeah, so see, Wahhabism is a particular branch of Sunniism, but I'm going to bring this up quick if I can. So here's just the Wikipedia site. It's not going to be definitive by any means, but it gives you a basic idea. So it's part of the Salafi movement, founded by, here's this guy, Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab. So the Wahhabism gets its name from the founder, right? Muhammad ibn Abd, and I'm totally butchering the names, but there you go. Theologian from Najd in Central Arabia, who founded the movement now called Wahhabism. Born to a family of jurists, so there's basically like a legalistic interpretation of what religion is. Early education consisted in learning a fairly standard curriculum of Orthodox jurisprudence. So, variously described as ultra-conservative, austere, fundamentalist, puritanical Islamic reform movement.
So is this where Sharia comes from?
No. Sharia is just Islamic law. The idea that you want, and this is part of the reason why so many people are mad at the current king of Saudi Arabia, because he wants to separate the sacred from the secular, right? Wahhabism. Right. So officially, you got the ruling family, and then you have like this other group of people that are the clerics that are responsible for managing. Basically, they're the ones responsible for managing what, really, the whole Arab world should be, how they should be viewing or interpreting Islamic doctrine. And those clerics have been engaged with this Wahhabism. So the history of the bad side of the Saudi royals, they were promoting Wahhabism, and Wahhabism is basically, it's an obscure sect that the British came in and they wanted the oil in the area, and they said, hey, well, we're gonna make you a deal. We're gonna support your military efforts, make you in charge of the area if we get your oil. We're gonna get and that's the deal that they had. So that's why the British are all wrapped up in Saudi Arabia in the Middle East.
Okay.
And there was one quick thing here in the Washington Post in an article that was done in 2011. I think they were probably a little more honest than they are now. Anyway, it says in 1948, he was sent to study the American education system. Some scholars say Qutb already viewed America negatively because of its ties with Great Britain, Egypt's former colonial master, and later because of its support of Israel. So then that even dug in further to his radical behavior. But it also does say one other quick thing, that one of the things that really turned him against the U.S., was after he heard a song here in the United States from a church dance in Colorado Church in the 1940s. Baby, It's Cold Outside. That is an old song. Anyways, that kind of like blew him over the edge, literally. And he went back and wrote some kind of paper or told his Muslim Brotherhood friends that the American girl is well acquainted with her body's seductive capacity. And he goes on this whole thing that's that women in America basically would rather use their bodies not as mothers and homekeepers, but to advance, basically like just advance their careers. They've gone outside of their boundaries, of what they're really in his mind, what women were supposed to be, which is childbearers and homemakers.
Yeah. Well, see, now, when you start looking into this stuff, like, how influential were, the black nobility in Europe, when they started making these deals and started interacting with this group of people that eventually became the House of Saud, how much, I mean, if all this black nobility in Europe, they're Satanists effectively, did they somehow help create this form of Islam specifically to serve this larger purpose of destruction and death and mayhem and all that stuff? I mean, is that
right?
Was it from the beginning of that theology, or did they just use it because it was going to serve their purposes? It was like after the fact.
They basically interpreted it the way that they wanted the outcome to be.
Who's they?
So if
they who?
The Wahhabists here and people like Qutb, there was a lady who had done a documentary a while back. It was really, really good, and she came from that environment. And she said, even the Quran, they interpreted it the way that they want it to be. So where everything is just radical, and when you actually break it down and read it, the majority of people in that environment, they want to read it to a more godly presence without all of the fighting and killing and murders and just the whole thing. It was a very interesting documentary that was done with her. So pretty much from my understanding of it is they've just interpreted it and taught it the way that basically drill it into their head the way that they want their followers or their children or their nation, how they're supposed to interpret it. They drill that into their head. This is the way you have to interpret this.
Yeah, and so we probably need to go into Wahhabism at another point. It's probably an episode of its own, looking into Wahhabism and the history there.
I think so.
But Wahhabism is going to be probably pretty important with the influx into Europe that Europe's got to deal with right now, because I think that's basically where all the militants come from, is this Wahhabism.
Right. Well, how many of them are Muslim Brotherhood on top of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm still not clear on all this. I mean, what level of distinction and interaction, Wahhabism is like a theological perspective, but Muslim Brotherhood is more like a political orientation. So to what degree do they cross over and mingle and cohabitate? I don't know. We're still learning. Right. We're just on the beginning of this journey, trying to figure out what's going on over there.
Well, and as a side note, I'm rereading the Quran, and it blows me away the stuff that they say and what they do. I don't know who in the name of the devil says that this is a religion.
Well, how different is that from like looking at the Old Testament, though? So
it's majorly different. It is.
I don't know. There's some pretty radical things in the Old Testament that's it's like
yeah, but not where a woman has to be locked up for 2 weeks during that cycle, and she's nothing more than dirt. You don't have things like that in the Bible.
Exactly.
And that's kill the infidel where he stands. Yeah, we do have talk about the unbelievers and stuff like that, but when
there's death and destruction going on in the Old Testament, though. Come on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of...
Yeah, but there's not in the New Testament, and the Quran was written around that time that the New Testament was. So we've got two radically different books. The Quran was actually written, I do believe, 80 to 100 years after Muhammad died. So what's going on in there is just recollections of the teachings of Muhammad.
And that's the same condition as the New Testament. The New Testament was written after the fact, too.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But look at the differences night and day.
I don't know. I'm not trying to pick a fight with Islam as a whole. As far as I know, I've had Muslim friends that are very good people, and I'm not trying to implicate them in all this. I mean,
right.
I'm just trying to look at the ones who are actually causing us heartache, the ones that are actually causing, terrorism and stuff.
All I'm saying, I'm not picking a fight either. However, I'm saying with the way that the book is written, it's very easy to cause this kind of problem. The Wahhabism, it makes people very uptight. It makes people very anxious over their beliefs and the fear that they might be going to hell over breaking some little tenet.
Well, how about this? We'll say that it could be argued that Islam as a whole is aggressive, but that's not the objective, in terms of what we need to accomplish. I mean, what we need to accomplish is getting rid of the people who are who view Islam is not fulfilled unless you are blowing people up. When that becomes the foundation of your doctrine,
the radical part of it.
Yeah, so
right.
If Islam, we can argue about the merits or demerits for Islam at another time. Back, once we get over the deep state, then we'll worry about that. But like right now, we just got to get rid of the people who think that they have to kill you because you're not Muslim.
Well, the thing that I'm trying to say is that there are people using those tenets to whip up a fury with these people who are such strong conservative believers of Islam.
Yeah, and that's what Wahhabism is doing.
What bothers me is they're taking the violence and the things that are being said in the Quran and using that to whip these people up into a frenzy. And this is it should be unacceptable behavior. Period. Yeah,
but where does this doctrine come from? And that's what I'm saying. That's why we're looking into this stuff. The flourishing of reformism in Iran. If you look at what they're calling Islamic reformism. So during the 40s and 50s in this book. What is it called? This is a Rutledge book, The Flourishing of Islamic Reformism in Iran, Political Islamic Groups in Iran from 1941 to 1961. So this starts in 1941. Why? Because that's when the Allied powers occupy Iran. Right? So that's when, and the Muslim Brotherhood was already there in terms of, the resistance to Western influence, but that's when World War II is going on. This is World War II era stuff, and that's when Islamic reformism first began. And this whole political Islam thing was specifically radical Islam, and that's the kind of, and so the first group was the Society of Socialist Theists. Are these people communists? Are they Nazis? I want to know what they actually believe and where these ideas came from. So Rutledge has this series of books that I wanted to get into. So this first one was just like The Flourishing of Islamic Reformism. So that's like a generic overview sort of thing. And this next one was, and these are big fat books, so we can't get through these anytime quick, but then we got a couple of other ones, one called The Political Thought of Sayyid Qutb. This Jahiliyyah is a particular concept that he's using, and this book is like a partner to this last book of this. They're like textbooks. So this last one's called The Power of Sovereignty: Political Ideological Philosophy of Sayyid Qutb. Qutb. So the first one of those, The Political Thought of Sayyid, that's more like, let's look at the table of contents. Where can I find this? Here. So you look down the table of contents here, and you can start to get some kind of general impressions of what's included in this book. So this whole book is about exploring this concept that I can't pronounce, Jahiliyyah, but it's essentially the non-Muslim world, and they view it as like anything non-Muslim is like intrinsically like a civil war world of ignorance. It's a world of materialism and illusion, and so that that idea directly contrasted against this other idea, the idea of sovereignty. And this is how Qutb starts looking into. So this is, okay, these concepts, these are the words in Arabic. So you got Hakimiyya and Jahiliya. I don't know how to say them. But so this Jahiliya is non-Muslim stuff, and Hakimiyya is like this, you know, basically a theocratic world religion. It's like first of all, it's religion and politics smashed together. There is no distinction between religion and politics, and it encompasses the entire world. So one world government is the objective, and it's going to be ruled by Islam. So I don't know what.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's her goal. Bridget Gabriel has some really good books out, and I'll put the link into the thing. We have a couple of these books. I just haven't got to read them. Because They Hate is one of them, and because she is a survivor of Islamic terror. And then there's one that several researchers, including her, put together, and it is called "Is Islam a Religion of Peace?" Areopagus Journal of the Apologetics. Yes, Resource Center. It's volume 10, number 1. Gordon, Nickel, Borger, Clausen, Gabriel, and there's like 4 more editors that did this book, and this book has a 4.5-star rating. And Is Islam a Religion of Peace? But Bridget Gabriel, she breaks it down really, really well. I can put those links into the chat thing. And we picked them up. You can pick them up used on Amazon or even on eBay for a little bit of nothing, which a couple of these I do have. I just have not had a chance to read them yet. But she has always done an outstanding job of just breaking it down in common sense terms where you can actually understand everything.
Well, that kind of book is going to tell you what is happening, but this kind of book is going to tell you why it's happening. And that's why I prefer the theoretical underpinnings is more important to me, because I want to know why. Why are you doing this? So it tells you what people are actually thinking, you know, and why they're, you know, what rationalizations they're using to justify their behaviors. You know,
because they hate.
No, it's not so simple as that.
She's always stated it. Because they hate.
So, well, it's going to take some work to get through this stuff. And another, I mean, it does. There's other questions that I have, like that pop up as you read through the text. It's like, okay, I mean, like for example, here locally, you know, well, I guess I don't know where our audience is, but for us who are participating in the conversation right now, we all are in mainland America, and so it's a little bit odd, at least to me, to wonder why there's so many feminists on the left that are going out there trying to protect Islam, when Islam is doing all this female genital mutilation and they have all those rapes going on in Sweden and stuff like that. If you're a feminist, exactly what kind of feminist are you if you're protecting the people that are going to hurt you more than any other group of people? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
I mean, if feminism is what it claims to be, that it's, you know, trying to work on behalf of women's rights and things like that, if there is any nobility to feminism, then you would think that's what they would be trying to do. But yet the feminists are the first ones to defend Islam and the migration into Europe and those kinds of things. Why? Why is that happening? You know, are feminists just really stupid? Are they serving some other agenda that they don't admit to?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what they were taught in college, too, at these liberal Marxist colleges. You know, they've kind of brainwashed them into thinking that this is what feminism is, and that's not necessarily what it is.
That's never what feminism was.
No,
ever.
It wasn't what it was about. But they don't know the difference. Many of them are so young.
It's been hijacked.
Well, feminism gotten taken over by the Marxists because they convinced all those feminists that gender was a class issue. You know, they so that, you know, they say, well, you women are just second-class citizens, and that's why you should be Marxists.
That started so many years ago, so many, you know, and then women, you know, they were, you know, authorized to vote, and it, you know, from back in the day. I mean, this is all, you know, historical is what it is, but for so many of these kids that are going to college now, not only are these things not taught in high school anymore, then you go to college thinking, okay, well, surely they're teaching me, you know, the truth, right? And then they get out of college believing that, and then they teach their children the same thing that they were taught in college.
Well, yeah, and so basically any college professor you run across, if you ask them if they respect critical thinking, they're saying, you know, yeah, that's part of my job is to teach critical thinking. And then you ask them the next question: define critical thinking. What is it? What does it look like? How is it different from any other form of thinking? You know, and then you're going to have all sorts of problems because nobody's really defined it.
Yeah.
But even that phrase critical is often used by Marxists. So, like, critical theory is a phrase that Marxists use. It's like this all-encompassing thing because they don't want to admit that they're Marxist theory. So rather than talking about rather than saying Marxist theory, they're saying critical theory. And so the word critical is actually code for Marxism.
But yeah, in a roundabout kind of way, it is. And they make it seem where it's extremely important that this is the only way that you can think. Yeah. And that's Marxist.
And that raises that other thing I remember. It's like they're always criticizing other people's ideologies as if, you know, during that criticism, they're acting as if that they themselves don't have an ideology, that they are perfectly objective. You know, they're the ones that know the truth, and this is not an ideology. It's no different than any other kind of dogma. You know, it's like you're failing to acknowledge the fact that you just have a particular set of theories that you want to employ in interpreting your experience. And so what they do is say, well, we've got the truth, and all you guys have ideologies. And what is an ideology?
They want it all groupthink. That's what they want.
Ideology is just
exactly like them.
It's just the way that you see the world. You know, it's the set of conceptual interpretations, how you look at the world. So what's your worldview? Yeah. But Marxists claim that they don't have a worldview, apparently. That's ridiculous.
That everybody needs to think like them.
Yeah, it's like, if you want me to think like you, then how do I do that if I'm not adopting a worldview? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So the words, they complicate the words. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. They consider it critical thinking.
Yeah.
We all must think alike.
Yeah. So herd mentality, is that what you mean by critical thinking? It's the opposite. Everything becomes the opposite of what it's supposed to be, because in their world, critical thinking means herd mind. I mean, what I would describe as herd mind, because you're all just robots. You're thinking the same thing. Yeah. There's no individuality in that.
Yeah.
You know, admittedly, the other side that often we overemphasize the importance of individuality and try to de-emphasize the significance of social influence in the way that your community has effects on the way that you see things. But they are so blind. They're dogmatic about it, you know. Mm-hmm. So how come we're not hearing from Bandit these days? Where did he go?
He might be napping. Bandit, are you napping?
You think he left us? Why did Bandit leave us?
I don't know.
I don't know.
He might be sleeping. Oh, he's not on there. Did he have a soccer game tonight?
Oh, you mean a volleyball game?
Maybe it was volleyball. Lord, I don't even know.
Okay, so here's one paragraph as you go through this text. So it's a textbook that I'm looking at right now. So there's a couple different textbooks in what they're calling political Islam, and that's just code for radical Islam, or, you know, death to America Islam, or whatever. But it's just one. It's milestones. All these different things. You know, Muslim Brotherhood got taken over by this book. This Sayyid Qutb wrote a bunch of stuff. And this milestones becomes like the rallying cry for all these radical Muslims. And so you should probably look into this book. It's let me get the. So this is the way it. I suppose it looks differently according to which edition you get, but so let's get into the. Where's the title page here? Yeah, there we go. Maktaba Booksellers and Publishers, Birmingham, England. There you go. We're going to have to dig into that more. I'm not sure we should spend a lot of time into that tonight, but I don't know. Depressing, really. But I mean, how much work there is. But at the same time, it's it's intellectually gratifying, I think, to really start digging in the dirt of what makes people tick.
Especially, these hobbyists tick.
Yeah, and I've been looking at it a little bit. So far, I don't know a whole lot, kind of keeping everybody posted as I know it. But I think that's enough for tonight on that point.
Raymond Knapp on here says the feminist movement has gone feral. Raymond, not all of us, not all of us were taught by Marxist teachers at the school, and we definitely did not teach our daughters to behave in such a manner as these airheads do today. Trust me, there's some real people out there with common sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm actually thinking I might want to quit a little early tonight because that was a lot to get through. I mean, we haven't done a whole lot of reading yet, but I mean, we're just contextualizing, getting ourselves oriented to go into this big kill. And to go in there and figure out who these bad guys are, so figure out why they think what they do. We got to do it. I mean, you may not like doing homework, but you're not going to understand their minds. You're not going to understand why they're doing it if you don't make the effort. So
you take a deep dive into the psyops world to try to figure them out.
Well, that's how they manipulate us. But in terms of what they actually think, what they think themselves, then we have to actually read their literature. We have to figure out what they find to be important and all that.
What makes them tick? Why are they behaving like they're behaving?
Yeah. So let me see. I go back. Let's check on this screen real quick. We got the 5-eye cyber threat. And like I say, I can't wait until we can get our other thing back. Or whatchamajigger call it? Was it the Norse attack map? That's the one we want. Because that one's.
It's pretty.
Yeah, and it's much more informative than this map. This map doesn't really say much. When it's attached to the United States, but it doesn't say where in the United States, does it? You can't even see it.
Well, it tells you where it's coming from, but it doesn't tell you who they're attacking and where the attack, what company's attacking you.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Huh?
Yeah, that's not near as pretty.
No, definitely not.
It gives you more. The Norse attack map tells you what company they're attacking and where exactly it's coming from. So, and you don't have that with this.
So, guys, I'm thinking it's time for us to head out because we made some pretty good progress. And now we have our music playing. Looking through the blinds because we're looking out at the world of conspiracies. Remember now, you'd have to be nuts not to believe that conspiracies exist. I mean, think about it. You don't think that rich and powerful people want to be more rich and powerful and are willing to do whatever it takes working against you to get what they want? I mean, how naive would you have to be not to believe in conspiracies? And all those the CIA's been using Hollywood and the mainstream media to convince you that your paranoia is not legitimate. And by the way, paranoia means almost thinking, because you almost know, you've almost figured it out. Well, okay. So guys, have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.